The Business of Music and Marketing by Maxwell Amani Manga. This book was written from personal and professional experience. All images were taken by me or someone I know. Use the concepts in this book as a guide for your way to success. Let's get to it. Chapter 1. What school won't teach you about music? I'll start by saying this. The more I got deeper into my music classes, I kept asking myself why I made this decision. Not that it's a bad thing, but not everybody needs it. Like most people, I started making music when I was young, like around 15, and self-taught from YouTube. A lot of people in my family, mainly my uncles who were DJs and producers back then, but their success only went so far. I wanted to bring this inherited talent to another level, not really knowing what path to take to reach my goal or how I would get there was something I kept asking myself. During that time, I was teaching myself through YouTube and Google. It got me far enough to the knowledge I've acquired to this day. Now, I've always wanted to attend a music entertainment school. I had the idea in mind that if I went to a top music school, I'd be up there with the pros and have all the skills to work with big artists. Knowing what I know now about music, I wonder if I could have chosen a different path. Having started freelancing 5 years ago prior to going into my first year of music school, there were a couple tricks I picked up. My experience wasn't so great, despite all the excellent gear that the school had. I have to say, famous people did graduate from there, so that wasn't really the issue. I was more concerned about how long it would take me to reach that point of success. I was eager to get into the studios and learn how the pros mix their songs. I shortly heard that I had to wait at least a year because of the classes I had to take in order to reach those ones. I knew I could find a way around it because there's always another way to get what you're looking for. The beginning of the classes were total bullshit. I told myself, if I didn't learn anything within the 3 months of being in class, I will drop out and find another school. I decided to go to a small technical school. As I was going through my classes and juggling between internships, I was getting confused on what I was learning and what they were teaching me in school. I wasn't exactly being trained at my internships, the real world, as they call it. If you're like me, you question everything. So, I asked my teachers for help, did my YouTube and Google searches, and observed how they worked in studios. In school, we built our sessions from scratch. But doing that in a professional recording studios wouldn't work because it would take too long to set up for an artist session. They used templates because the efficiency of work is essential. You see, I compare music school to the traditional way of teaching, and I'll tell you why. Y'all remember when you were listening to tips for life from your professors? How if you don't get good grades, you'd be a failure? How everyone needs to find the best paying job if they want to be rich and successful? Well, let me put this into perspective. Music school is almost the same because, yes, they're right on some stuff, but not everything they teach you is true. I'm sure you've had people tell you that you always need to educate yourself out of school because school doesn't teach you everything. Everyone needs to experience and mess up to learn from their mistakes, and it's the same with music. How do you know what equipment you need to buy, what type of mic, speaker, or the budget required for you to fund your studio? I used to spend hours in the music stores because I didn't have the money to get the expensive equipment or anything at first. The money my mother gave me for school lunch and other stuff is what I used to get my mic, interface, and keyboard. She did help me a little, but not for long because the price for what I needed to get was mind-blowing to everyone else I knew, and still is till this day. Chapter 2. Music is marketing. I would tell you that knowledge is power, but know how and when to use it. See, everyone knows a little bit of something in music, but They don't use their knowledge because people who don't do anything in music tell them it won't work. I can already tell you, do not listen and do what you know. No one will know if your ideas work until you decide to take action. I did not and will never say not to attend school because of these reasons. If you need the guidance to learn music and don't feel like learning it through trial and error, that is perfectly fine. Some people need that because we all have different ways of learning. Just know, the education doesn't stop there. They are there to teach you the bare basics, and it's up to you to figure out the rest. I know you probably haven't thought about it in this way, but check it. How do you think major companies, food, drinks, products, brands, and anything else gets known? I didn't really know how to name this chapter because it's a mixture of a lot of elements. Music is also branding when you think of an artist or commercial. Who's your favorite singer, rapper, or band? What about the music or jingles you hear playing in the beginning of your favorite shows? The soundtracks or sounds that play in products like Dan and Yogurt, the Yum in Red Robin, especially in podcasts and sometimes YouTubers, since that's been a trend in the time we're in. It's like a signature. When you hear them, you know where it comes from. When you make music, it's a part of your personality, or experiences, or just for the fun of making music, representing anything you imagine of. You're telling a story. You're marketing your image. And all that has to do with your brand. The relationship between your music and your brand is because a brand is always associated with a personality and color. And every color has a meaning behind it. If you think of red, you either think of danger, anger, or love. If you see white, you think of purity. When you see blue, it's calming. It becomes a color of psychology. And it's the same for music. If the colors are well associated, it'll be an easy way of catching people's attention. If you're the type of person who likes wearing expensive brands, jewelry, or driving luxury cars, and talk about it in your songs, you're technically promoting their product. The action of doing that pushes people and your fans to purchase those same items. Now, if you know any promoters who work in nightclubs, venues, or companies with big names, what do you think happens when they bring new customers? Compensation. I think you know where I'm going with this. This is only my opinion, of course. Whether you have your own product, brand, or partnership, there should always be compensation of some sort. Anyone can be remembered if they represent themselves well enough. Your style, song, words, attitude has everything to do with it. You can either motivate, have a party type of energy, or a healing mind. Not everyone is the same. We all have different elements in our personality that attract people. We just need to know how to use them effectively. I was watching a video about Dr. Dre and Jimmy Iovine on YouTube a while ago on their tips for success. I always like to hear what the top dogs in the game have to share with their audience. They inspired me to write this book because, yes, I do have a lot of ideas, but I like to leave an impact on everything I do. If you haven't yet, I strongly encourage you to go watch it. Dr. Dre and Jimmy Iovine on their tips for success. British GQ. Jimmy quoted, "Fame is what the currency is. Likes. Fame, and even if you happen to be great, musicians up until recently, that's why people put music out every day. That's marketing. Of course, marketing is not the only element that music does, but it is one of the strongest ways because the purpose of marketing is to create influence in order to get people to know about something and get them to follow. With the right person and song, your work can go a long way, and without marketing, you don't exist." Chapter 3. Why artists get paid last and so little. Here's the thing. A lot of people want to get signed, but no one wants to be a slave. This might not make sense right now, but hear me out. Let's take our rent as an example. In order to live in your house or apartment, you need to pay rent unless you own it, right? You had to sign an agreement in order for you to be allowed to live there. It's the same way for music. Why would you get all the profit if you're only doing so little? You could be known, but you are given everything else in order for you to make what you need to put out as a single or multiple projects. There are numerous ways to get paid as an artist. Streaming, publishing, ads, synchronization, and more. You can look them up. It just takes a bit of research. Most people don't know how to get to the money because of their lack of knowledge or resources. A lot of us don't like to do research because it's boring, but that's where everything is. You ever wonder why people refer to artists as starving artists? Well, it's because most have little to no money. People use your music to make themselves richer, but you don't seem to understand the why or the how. Another reason is lack of value and financial support. For example, streaming services really don't pay you enough, like $0.002 maybe. Unless it became less than that by now. It's becoming undervalued through the years because it's easy access and technology is evolving. There's also a big part of you needing to put yourself out there and stop being scared. A lot of artists are scared of criticism, mockery, insecurity, and other shit. Now, people need to understand the basics of business because it's also from there that things get very out of hand. It's definitely not an easy aspect to learn about, especially when most artists come from low-income families and or have struggled to even find $1 to survive. I myself have struggled to a certain extent where I had to find my ways to make money when I first started out. Watching Dre, Diddy, Master P, and other successful people, rappers, and producers make it, watching their documentaries, comparing it to current artists in the game, something disturbed me. Most of the artists were not only signed, but they didn't know what or even who they were signed to sometimes. That's when I started to pay attention to the business side of things. Being signed isn't a bad thing. Quite the opposite in some cases. The main problem is that most people don't have, nor did they create enough leverage for themselves before being signed to cover any future expenses. Russ talks about it in many of his interviews on how he made it work for himself and pushes other artists to do the same. I have to admit, a lot of artists, producers, even engineers don't know how much they're worth, and that's because most get talked down and a lot don't see themselves being valuable enough. In my opinion, it's a self-esteem issue that plays a big role as well. You gotta be confident and know how much your work and skills are worth. Little do you know, some are worth more than they think, while others aren't. Chapter 4. Why you should stay independent. Do you love freedom? Let me ask this differently. Do you like having the freedom of creating what you want and putting it out whenever you feel like it? I'm sure you also like being in control of the image you want people to have of you, right? Well, it's all possible. When being independent, there are of course pros and cons, but at the end of the journey, it's about what's more valuable to you. The disadvantages are quite obvious. You have limited resources, which only allows you to spread yourself to a few people. Your budget is limited to what's in your pocket and the people interested in investing in you. Your career won't take off as fast as you think it will. It can or might not, depending on your plan, luck, or who you know. Alright, on the positive side, you will own the majority of your rights, if not all. You will be in control of what you are able to do with your music. You will have a more loyal crowd and fan base simply because you are most likely going to build organically since you don't need to put a facade, and your release dates will remain flexible. All that being said, it might or not be for you without counting the sleepless nights, overworking yourself, the doubt of making it or not knowing if you will or won't. It comes with lots of discouragement and uncertainty of how long you'll be doing whatever you choose to do. The push and drive will come either within you or by people or artists you listen to. It isn't easy to be motivated, but it for sure feels good when you hit your accomplishments. Most people don't like to read. I can understand, because I myself don't like to read either. And ironically enough, I wrote a book. I realized how essential reading was after a year of reading a couple books and articles, but also doing research on YouTube and other places about how artists failed. Most didn't read their agreements with people or businesses, or relied on another party. Reading is definitely not a fun thing to do, depending on who you are, but it's an essential skill, at least do research so you don't fall into mistakes that you could have avoided. Chapter 5. Why Perfection Kills Creativity. What if I said that the perfect time was now? I could also say that the perfect time is never. Confused? It's fairly simple when you think about it. Most people never start on their idea, song, beat, or even to put it out. It could be fear, waiting for the perfect time, or overthinking the process. These are all illusions that we put in our minds. If you remember back when you were a child, when were you ever scared? If anything, your parents might have been, or people who've experienced negative impacts that never overcame it. When it comes to music, this is very common. While we do want to have the best sound, bars, best beats, etc., we tend to overthink and overanalyze what already sounds good to the average consumer. I love the imperfection at times, because that's what makes it perfect. The purity of the project or craft. A lot of our work is done in the worst moments or bad times of our life, and that's when it should be produced, if the tools are available for us to work with. I know y'all can relate. Would you be worried if I told you that most perfectionists are procrastinators? Or that perfectionism leads to procrastination? We don't want half-ass shit. And also, not overwork it either. You tend to focus on the tiny things that sometimes doesn't matter, because less than maybe 5% of people notice it. It makes you lose time on what can actually make a project better. The bigger picture. You put a bar too high for yourself that is almost near impossible to accomplish just because of what would be expected from you in the eyes of other people. When you do that to yourself, you keep thinking that you're not good enough, or that you can do better, which makes you spend maybe a week on a track that was already done within 2 days. But for some reason, you felt as if I need to find the smallest problem and fix it. Here's something to think about. Have you ever heard of the 80-20 rule? 80% of results come from 20% of effort, or maybe the saying of less is more. The reason why I like imperfection is because there's always room for improvement, development, and feedback. Perfectionism makes you restart over and over until you lose yourself and end up not completing whatever you were working on. Think about your first beat or song you wrote compared to now and how long it took you. What you should actually be aiming for is progress. With progress, you're trying to improve yourself after a number of results and criticism given. You create more without being so meticulous. You are allowing your brain to express emotions easier. It's like waiting for the right moment. There is none if you don't create a starting point. In music, there's no perfect song if you haven't made a mixtape to compare it to. You just gotta do it. Because if you don't, you will never know. And you'll only have yourself to blame for it. Take action. Fuck it up. That's the key to progress and making the next song better. Write some lyrics down. Put that melody on and don't look back unless the key ain't right. But you get what I'm saying. Don't get stuck on what you don't have yet. Don't put such high expectations on yourself because you are your worst critic. Progress creates experience. Without experience, you don't have a track record. Stop hesitating and second guessing yourself because the first guess is 90% of the times the right one. How can your work be perfect if the world isn't? Sounds stupid? It might be, depending on what perfect means to you. Just like success. Winning a Grammy might be yours, while living from your music might be someone else's. Chapter 6. Top brand gear won't make you the best. I own a couple of reputable brand name equipment, and there is a reason for that. At first, it's pretty abnormal to own a Neumann, Barefoot, or Universal audio gear because they're so expensive. Something I've always told my friends when they ask me for advice was get what you can afford because you might not know how to properly use the more expensive gear. It's a process. It's like having a pair of 20-inch speakers in a small bedroom. Nonsense. First of all, any gear you have should fit to the size of your room, as in not too big, but not too small either, so that when you crank that volume knob up, you can experience the full sound of what you got. Same goes for your microphone, your interface, and analog gear if you own any yet. Once you become more recognized in the field you jump into, recording, mixing, television, movies, you'll eventually need to be equipped with high-performance materials because low-end gear wears out after a while and becomes defective. It's an investment that you have to think of wisely. The benefit of cheap equipment is that you spend little money for something you might or might not like. You're not going to break the bank. You can learn about the gear and see what kind of sounds you want to go for. There are different types of brands made for different types of music genres and industries, like genetics, amphion's, focals, and so on. For example, you're not going to perform a speech with a condenser mic because you'll be picking up noise from everywhere, and nobody wants to hear your footsteps when you walk on stage. Don't be going out buying a whole 32-channel mixer for $64,000 if you plan on mixing 2 tracks and vocals, unless you're working on a series and movies and are looking for some specific sound. But I'm sure there are other ways to go about that. The key is to use what you have to the best of the equipment's capacity and your knowledge until you feel like you're learned enough and want better sound. You could also be satisfied with the quality you're currently getting. Some brands are better than other brands because of what they're known for. I own 2 pairs of different brand speakers because of that particular reason. But I started off with some basic Alesis studio monitors, then switched to M-Audio AV40s in 2014. Upgraded 5 years later to some Genetics and Epitone because I liked what I was hearing. It took me a couple years to figure out what I was really looking for, and the way I learned how to listen to studio monitors was by playing my beats and mixes at Guitar Center, then going to different studios. I would look up all the mic brands and learn what they're known for, because I didn't want to spend any money on the wrong material. Could I have done fine without upgrading? Maybe. But would I have accomplished all the recent projects I've had to work on? Probably not. Certain projects required a certain level of detail for me to hear and some frequencies that my old speakers wouldn't have been able to produce. A must for all musicians and anyone involving sound is to invest in sound treatment. Once you decide to invest in those top brands and don't have any proper acoustic treatment in your room, your gear is useless. We're not science freaks, but think logically for a second. If you were in a stadium and were producing a soundtrack for your favorite rapper, singer, or movie scene, imagine yourself adding some reverb. How do you think it'll sound like? Quite confusing, right? But hold up, you got the best keyboard and those huge speakers. Well, the sound is traveling around the room, so your mix won't even be accurate. I hope this is making sense. A tip I can give you guys is to search what the best people in your field are using and maybe research why they're using it. Learn the qualities and defaults because that'll help you make a conscious decision on what to look for and not blindly spending $50,000 or $100,000 on some product you have no info on. Who knows? You might blow something up. Chapter 7. You are your own brand. We all know what a presentation is. A brand is the same thing. It's something you stand on because of what it means to you, just like any company you know. A brand has a signification to its name, which often goes along with specific colors to match it. An audience will attach itself to a brand because of the way they feel when they see it, wear it, and feel it. You will never see a hippie wearing Prada or driving in a Benz. Those are made for people who are either looking for status, like designer material, or want to live a luxurious lifestyle. Hippies are typically drawn to nature, peace, love, and community. If we want to see how colors play a role in branding, let's take Sony Music as an example. Red is excitement, energy, passion, courage, attention, lust, power, love, speed, and anger. Black is power, control, authority, discipline, discretion, secrecy, elegance, and mystery. If you're a singer or rapper, you might differentiate yourself by your attitude, character, and other personalities. The better you build it, the easier your fans and even other people who aren't will remember it because you made it unique. Artists typically have a word they always say in their intro or before they start to spit their verse on the song. It could be a word or a little phrase or their stage name, something they can be recognized by, and eventually you will hear people repeat it because it was so catchy. So, as you can see, branding works everywhere in life, no matter if it's for a product or service. Chapter 8. There are levels to networking. Yeah, it sounds like a cliche saying. That's just because you're not networking correctly, and not everyone knows the full saying. Or, if as some say, you're not using your resources correctly. It's like this. We all have friends who have different skill sets. We hang out with some friends for different reasons. Then, we create a circle of friends as we get older and more mature, usually. Knowing the people I know now while still improving my surroundings, as it never stops, because there's always more to learn and discover. The purpose of networking has rewards if you play your cards right. Being younger, as a teenager, you might have acquaintances, close friends that you might or might not consider as family, and just general friends. Networking works in the same way, just with a little twist. I often tell people, networking truly helps if the ones you do it with can actually help you or have resources in what you need. Look at your circle and you'll see your future. That goes with some of the topics you talk about too. You have to be around individuals who are either living the lifestyle you want, have been where you are at the moment, and had success, and people who will push you to work to achieve progress and grow mentally, physically, and acquire skills. Networking is scary for some, while being a piece of cake for others, as if they were born with it. The reality is, networking is really just meeting people and exchanging information, ideas on topics, plans, goals, and creating opportunities. You're building relationships with new people to better your future. I will agree, it can be intimidating and uncomfortable to approach a random person and ask them a bunch of questions. We all act differently when we're nervous. We sweat, talk fast, and stutter. Our mind goes blank. Here's a tip for you, depending on if you know the person or not. Pull out your phone and write 1 to 3 questions you have so you don't forget what to say. Present yourself and tell them what you do in a few words. Ask them one of your questions if you know them, or what they do if you just met them. Listen fully. Ask them for their advice or about their experience. Everyone who's successful will love to tell you their story, and that can be a start of a convo. That is just a template of what you can say. There are, of course, other ways to have a conversation with people, just like the first time you meet a new friend or a friend of a friend. You can start a conversation by giving them a compliment about their outfit if you're into fashion, or maybe the cool song you heard them perform and would like to collaborate. In the music business industry, it's definitely not easy to reach the top, and we all know that. You never know who you will meet and who they know, so you have to present yourself accordingly and up to par. Know your strengths and you can network up and down because of the different roles in this business. A group of people can benefit from each other. Confidence is key, and not being afraid of a no. This will happen more than you think. The more experience you build, the more you'll learn and know how to navigate. Just like building a fan base, some will like what you have to offer and join in. Who you know can take you further than what you know. You don't need to be the smartest person. Chapter 9. The Immigrants' Hustle Mindset. Never stop fighting until you're satisfied. In America, many immigrants come to build a better life for themselves and their family. Most come from third world countries where there isn't much resources or a future to build. So they come to the US hoping to one day be a part of the elites. The reason why I called this chapter The Immigrants' Hustle Mind is because immigrants will find a way to get to their goal no matter what. The worst that can happen is getting deported, and they would have to do something extremely out of hand. All that being said, you want to have that type of mindset because it will allow you to go as far as possible in anything you want to accomplish. No excuses. When you come from the worst living conditions possible, you can only do better. In this business and any other business, you have to work hard to reach the top of the ladder. You will fail because that's a part of life. Every failure is a step closer to success. Let's switch it up a little. Assuming you've been making music or been in the music industry for a while, whether it's making beats, singing, rapping, engineering, or managing an artist. Compare your first song to your latest song or project. You might cringe or laugh. Realize it's a long game process where you will have to learn by working on yourself in the field of practicing, collaborating, etc. You will experience rejection, self-doubt, and other negative feelings. On the other hand, you will develop thick skin, and that will help shape you in the business world. Maybe you didn't get the deal you thought you were ready for. Perhaps your proposal was denied by a big client who made fake promises. We've all had clients who owed us money because of whatever situation. Maybe you thought you could trust them because they were a family referral or a friend of a friend you're close with. What was your thought process at that exact moment? Doesn't return calls or texts. You must learn to take lessons from any bad experience you've had so you don't replicate them again. You have to learn to never give up even in times of defeat. Most successful entrepreneurs, business owners, and self-made millionaires have had many losses and a few big wins. It's all a learning process, except that in this one, it's a lot more instinct-driven than pure logic. You want to be aware of one thing. It's to hustle with strategy. What do I mean by that? Many people just tell you to keep hustling, and there's nothing wrong with that, but you don't want to do it without a goal, or you might get lost in the hustle. You could be wanting to achieve a financial goal, maybe a new house, the next mic to get your vocal sounding top-notch. It's good to reverse engineer how to get it just so you can create your own template of how you can get what you want. Majority of people we know call that a business plan. A lot of artists and other creatives aren't really the best at creating one. So this is, in my opinion, another way of creating your own sort of business plan. They can change at any time because of unexpected circumstances, just like COVID. Just like an immigrant would do, you have to learn to adapt to anything that can happen because you have no other choice if you want to succeed. For example, if you all remember, most people watch the news on TV, but slowly enough, one by one, no one really paid attention to TV anymore, unless it was parents or grandparents. During COVID, society realized more individuals were going to YouTube for everything, so they decided to make the news live 24/7 and put it on the front page. A lot of us go to YouTube for entertainment, but also for education. Reporters or whoever is in charge realized they didn't really have an audience for TV anymore. Everyone is leaving cable. That's all of how you have to switch your way of thinking in chaotic situations. Let's take another example for marketing. Many of us would see commercials of food, apps, sports, etc. on TV. Around 2018 to 2019, there was this big rise of influencers who started filming their lifestyle, products they bought, and did reviews about them. Big brands started to use them as their marketing strategy because it was a faster and more convincing way to market their products. The only thing is, you would see it on YouTube or Instagram for the most part because everyone was spending more time on their phone. That is a big way society itself had to adapt for us because we are what they need to make the world go the way they want. That's how the business of marketing changed as well as music, going from recording in huge studios to recording from your basement. Gear became more affordable for any beginner musician to start recording themselves, no matter how bad or how good their songs may end up sounding. That's how you switch up your thinking. There's a video on YouTube from Bedros Keuilian called How to Outwork Everyone, and the thumbnail says, "Develop Immigrant Work Ethic." If you haven't yet, you should go take a look. Myself, being an immigrant from Europe and Africa, and coming to America undocumented to build myself a better future, I noticed that people limit themselves by what others say from what they may have wanted but didn't make it because they played it too safe without risking the tiniest thing. We all have different perspectives on life because of what we've been through in the past. Your hustle becomes different once you've seen and been through enough and want to change your life. It's the same thing in this music business. You'll get done wrong and you'll get it right. You'll learn through the process and never stop. It doesn't need to be perfect. Just make it work till you know better. Chapter 10. Your intuition will teach you what business school can't. Have you ever been in a situation where you were given a task to complete and procedures to follow, but weren't able to get it done because you didn't know how to maneuver and were afraid to mess up? Do you ever have this feeling before you do something for someone that doesn't seem consciously right to you, but you still do it simply because the person asked? We've all been there at least once in our life, whether it's in school, at work, or hanging out with friends and family. The results could have been unintentionally negative or positive, but something convinced you to make a decision. As we grow in life, we're taught by society to not listen to our heart or gut because there's no specific time where something can go wrong. There's no right or wrong equation for how to start hustling. You just have to jump in with an idea you think could work, study your environment, etc. I didn't go to business school, though I wanted to because I like to learn, but what I kept seeing and realizing was most people who went had a hard time to start their own business, or were scared to take their first step, ironically enough. In school, we're taught that failing leads to consequences, and the more you do, the less successful you'll be. In life, you can't succeed unless you failed, because every failure is a lesson that you can learn from. It's kind of the same with your intuition. There's a different logic that happens there. It's more of a common sense world, where no one needs to tell you to fill your gas tank if you don't want to be stranded, or to turn down the volume of a song in your car and no one can hear each other speak. Of course, there are trickier situations where deals come into play and you have to work your thinking process a little harder, but those come with experience. A friend of mine, who is also a very good singer, was studying business administration and was in her third year of school. An artist asked her if she could record some vocals and send it to him for this song he wanted to publish. So she gave him her price, which he agreed on. A few days go by and she tells him that she finished and asks for the money so she can send it to him. He tells her to just email the vocals to him and he'll send her the bread once he gets paid. She agrees, but unfortunately doesn't receive the money. That's when the excuses started. I have a bill coming up. You'll get it after. Something else came up. Anything to keep it dragging. Never send the products before receiving the full amount. You might learn a lot of business theory and formulas, but nothing that practical to learn how to figure out a different way of thinking if shit goes south. You might not see tricks customers play on you, because even in school, teachers don't see them coming, unless they grew up different. Think about the successful people you know that are in the music business or marketing and others. 50, Dre, Jay-Z, Kanye, Beyonce, Nipsey, R.I.P. to the GOAT, and much more. It's all about following your gut, because there's a lot that you simply can't learn by applying a formula, but you can sense something in you that convinces you that it's the right move. You might know why, because you've been following it and know how to take the next steps, no matter if it's managing an artist, negotiating on a contract, or finding merchants for your clothing you want to push. If you go listen to Jay-Z's video on YouTube called Jay-Z, Life Advice Will Leave You Speechless, featuring Will Smith, Eye-Opening Speeches, at 5:13 to 5:37 by Winning Mentality. The total video length is 10:14, as well as Nipsey's video, Nipsey Hussle, Trust Your Instincts, by Billionaire Hustle. The video is 59 seconds. More than often enough, we have an idea of what we should do, but we're not taught to listen to it. It's almost like we second guess ourselves, just like tests we used to take in class. The more you trust yourself and your instincts, the faster you'll progress and you'll make the best decisions in life and in this business. Everyone has experienced self-doubt, or still might be. We're all skilled, talented, and knowledgeable to some degree at what we do. Someone will always know more or less than we do, but we can't let that hold us back from shining. Confidence, self-assurance, and knowing yourself is a very important factor to be successful, because if you don't have those qualities in you, it won't happen. In this industry, people are either looking for fame, money, legacy, or freedom. All those require you to be known by a way or another. You can be the best photographer, videographer, label owner, or social media manager, and no one knows of your existence because you have not promoted yourself. We all know nothing happens overnight, and nothing is perfect the first time you start. But that doesn't mean that you can't show some footage of you in the making, some BTS captures, behind the scenes. If it looks like you're doing it for real, people will ask you what the results are. They will ask you to send something you've done. When you promote your work, it allows people, your future fans, clients, and partners to show your professionalism if you're at that level. You might need more work. You might receive criticism, and that's okay. If no one sees your work, how do you expect to get fans? How will you know who your audience is? You might be targeting the wrong people, and that's why they don't promote you. Your work has to resonate with your audience. Once you start sharing your work and people like it, they will repost what you've accomplished. And that's how you will become more confident. Others might be confident by nature in their work, but not about posting it and their alt talk. They're afraid of criticism. Most people are, because we're not meant to like it. You'll learn to listen to critics once you've encountered lots of rejection. Wanting to be known comes with heavy weight. Promoting and advertising yourself comes with heavy weight and mental strength. Chapter 11. They'll know you once you promote you. Think about your biggest artists, producers, label execs you look up to. Go watch their documentaries. Search how they became famous. You can create merch with your brand name and wear it everywhere you go. Ask your friends and family to wear it. Have your pet wear a little cape. Create accessories for your friends with your company name. Think outside the box, but you need to promote yourself out in the world and they will know who you are. We live in a day and age that it's never been so easy to share what you do. We all associate a face to a name or sound. I used to make beats. I had moved from Belgium to Virginia, living in my aunt's place when I was 16. She knew I loved music, and she asked our local church if there was anything I could do to help them with. I joined the media department and helped out with their live sound production. I learned how to mix live music, set up mics, and how to use a control surface, the X32 from Behringer. I then told them that I've been making beats for a year, and since they used to do video announcements every Sunday morning to talk about their upcoming events, they asked me if I could create some laid-back, deep house beats to put in their videos as background music. I agreed and got straight to work once I got home. And that next Sunday, when I showed up and they played the video, the choir leader announced that I was the one behind the making of the music. I felt so happy, but very nervous as well, because I had came from a place where I was being mocked since my stuff wasn't the best, but I kept practicing and got better. Within a few weeks, the whole area was coming to me for sessions and beats since I had a studio. I was also the only one making music in my school before I moved. You never know how people will know you, but you have to be ready at all times. I have endless stories about what I've been able to accomplish and learned just by following my instincts, taking action, and being ready. If people know what you do and it's good work, they'll talk about it. If it's bad, they'll talk about it. If you got better, they'll talk about it. Promote you, and they will too. Keep hustling.